Evening, morning, and afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. I hope you are having a wonderful week so far. We are here with the latest episode of the Inside Crypto Show, interviews and discussion with regular people like yourselves. Today, we are joined by a very special guest. He's the head of partnerships at Marinade Finance. You should all be familiar with them because they are the largest constituent of our SOLI index and also the largest liquid staking solution on Solana. We have to do the usual disclaimer. Anything said by either Torab or myself does not constitute financial advice. Our opinions are our own and not to be connected with our employer. Please do your own research because it's just Torab today, so you can spend a little more time talking about his background before we dive into crypto. Torab, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy day. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm happy about the disclaimer about not taking financial advice because I don't even take financial advice from myself. So that's a good reminder. Yeah, my name is Torab, and I've actually been contributing to Marinade for a while. Crypto and Web3, it's all non-linear, I would say, right? The typical apply for a job, they interview you, they pass you around, and then you get the job. It's more of a you contribute, they get the feel of what kind of person you are, what kind of skills you bring to the table, and then you guys find a way to work together, and that's how this happened. So I actually only recently started like head of partnerships, but I've been contributing for a long time. And my background is actually I was born and raised here in California in the Bay Area, went to UC Berkeley, actually was teaching for a bit, got into tech sales. And then once I got into crypto in around 2017, that's when I first got into crypto. I knew I wanted to get in, but the biggest issue is always what can I do in crypto? Everyone seems to be a genius, and I'm the only idiot at the table. And so I just started to contribute and try to learn about stuff, and here we are. I'm not sure what else background you're hoping for, but I hope that paints a pretty clear picture.
It does, and that's a great picture. We do have a fair number of younger people, early 20s and stuff, who listen. What did you study to get into crypto, or was it related at all?
Absolutely not. So I was studying history and the Arabic language. My family's from Afghanistan, so we don't speak Arabic, we speak Farsi, but I wanted to learn Arabic, and so I majored in it and was teaching Arabic for a while and then got into tech sales, absolutely unrelated, or you would think. But actually, I think most of sales in general and marketing is just education, right? You're trying to teach someone, hey, this is why you should care about something, this is why you should use something. And so I do think they are correlated in a way. And to the young people, so I recently had an AMA with Jupe.ag, right? Like Mercurial team, like they're one and the same. And so we discussed about careers, and I don't want to turn this into a whole career pep talk, but I will say that if there's young people and if you're a coder, I don't know what advice to give you. Go do what you do. If you're not into that and you don't know how to code and you want to get a crypto, I can tell you that, hey, don't go the traditional route. It's not a traditional industry. You should just contribute. Just understand what they do, understand what people care about. Because one thing I guarantee you is that every single crypto team is thirsty for talent. And it's not just talent, it's people that get it, right? So you can come in with a Harvard, whatever, MBA and be like, oh, I did this and I did that. But when you step in, if you don't get it, you're useless for the most part. Like you need to understand what people care about, what is going on, and then try to figure out where you can provide value. I hate saying provide value because it's so cliche. Just being able to be helpful, right? We'll say helpful. So if you can be helpful, then you will always have a place at the table because I think a lot of protocols are learning the hard way that it's not just having good product, it's being able to teach people about your product. If you don't have that marketing or sales arm, you're just going to be a great product that no one ever uses. And there's plenty of those in the history books of great businesses that died, not because the product wasn't good, it's just that people didn't use it.
That is some sage advice right there. Going back to what you said about starting crypto in 2017, listeners to our YouTube channel or watchers, viewers of the YouTube channel and listeners to the podcast would know, like I started crypto in 2017. I started building computers when I was young and I was like, oh, let me build this computer just to mine. And that's how I got in. So what was that sort of first thing that sort of pushed you into crypto? Was it mining? Was it Bitcoin in the news? What was that memory?
So I'm very ashamed of my first crypto purchase. It was Ripple. But at the time, I didn't understand that you could buy a portion of a Bitcoin. So I remember, I think it was like GitHub or something. It was some really small exchange, and they only had three things, or they had four. It was Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and Ripple. And I was like, that's a few thousand, that's a few hundred. This is like 13 cents. I'm gonna buy some of that. And so That was my first purchase. And then you have to have skin in the game to learn. Once you actually have money on the line, that's when generally people are like, hey, maybe I should pay attention to this. And so that's what got my foot in the door. And then once I realized what Ripple is, I sold all my positions and I tried to reallocate into Ethereum and Bitcoin. In 2017, there was just a whirlwind of coins, Cardano and Flash. There's all these weird tokens that are absolutely like gone now. Not Cardano, but I think Flash is basically dead. And so it's fun to see like who was able to survive the wreckage of 2017 and the 18 crash and who's still on the scene in 2022.
Totally true. Still following up on another thing that you mentioned as well. You said you started off contributing. I know a little bit of coding, but I'm definitely very much in the same camp as you, as sort of contributing in other ways. Like how you mentioned, get in there, start working with people, contributing in your own way. Like how did you start contributing before you became head of partnerships?
So first of all, I was using the product and I was able to make my first SOL purchase fairly early. Definitely not FU money or any of that type of stuff, but enough where I cared about it. And so I remember when I was staking, one of the issues was that you had to stake with a validator. And first of all, I don't know any of the validators because I was new to that whole concept of staking. And then once you stake, you can't do anything. So you just sit on your hands. And I did that for a few months when I staked. And I was like, man, there was something else we could do with like our SOL. And then that's when Marinade came out and they had liquid staking. And so it was just much more capital efficient. And so I used that. And once I got in, I got into the Discord, asking questions. Then they actually, I think there was like some kind of Google Doc. Hey, if you're interested in contributing, let us know. I filled it out. We had an interview. And they said, like, we know we want you. We want you to contribute, but we need to figure out how exactly. And so I think for most people, if people see like a nugget inside of you of talent or like opportunity or potential, I should say, they will generally invest. And this is true in tech companies and work too as well. Like a lot of times, because I used to do hiring, my God, it is so hard to find someone that's not an idiot or like someone who actually cares. I swear to God, it's the hardest thing. It's much harder to find a good hire than it is to find a good company to work for. And I'd say Web3 is that squared because there's less talent coming in. And so if you can just show that, hey, I have some potential, I want to do something and I can do something, I don't know what, that is generally enough for people to be like, all right, I'm gonna give this guy a chance or this girl a chance. Everyone wants like a recipe, but the secret is it has to be your own recipe. And so that's the kind of hard thing to replicate.
Oh man, you just like all these sort of little sound bites and stuff because I keep track of sound bites for promotion for podcasts and video. We're not even at 10 minutes and I don't even know what I'm going to do with all this stuff. I'm writing it down as well. So it's such valuable advice and I really appreciate you getting into it today. So now we get into the good stuff. Talk about Marinade, talk about Solana, because you guys have so many good things, and we've talked about Marinade, like I mentioned before, on our last 3 episodes covering Solana news. For people, because there are some people in the Amun community who are not familiar with Marinade, do you want to tell us what Marinade is, or a high level sort of overview?
All right, so I'm going to warn you in advance. It is not sexy. It is definitely not one of those sexy protocols like the Ohm forks or whatever that's going to be giving you thousands APY. So what was the problem? The problem is that people want to earn staking rewards, right? Solana's proof of stake. So if you're not staking your Solana, you're actually being hurt by inflation. And I'm not talking about the CPI, I'm talking about just the token emissions. And so a lot of times what you want to do is you want to stake it. But the issue with staking traditionally was that you give it to the validator and then you can't do anything. And so then what Marinade did is say, hey, what if you give us that token and we give you a liquid staking? You give us SOL, we give you mSOL, and that represents SOL that is delegated to other validators. And then you can go and you can put that into different DeFi protocols and start earning yield. So it's much more capital efficient. So there's a second problem, which is you don't want everyone, you don't want a few validators to hold all the delegated, the staked SOL because they could theoretically attack the network or halt the network. And so on Solana, it's 1/3 of the SOL that's staked, and that's called the Nakamoto coefficient. So if you want that 33% to be as distributed as possible so that a few people can't work together and conspire against the network. And so what Marinade does is they say, okay, if you're like a top 20 or 21 validator, we are not going to give you any of our SOL. So when you stake with Marinade, we take your SOL and we say, okay, who's a top validator that's performing really well, that doesn't have a lot of SOL? And we start delegating to them. And in that way, we empower the smaller validators and we decentralize the network. So to answer your question, liquid staking solution and decentralized Solana and basically act as a security layer. It's kind of like street sweeping or something like that. It's not that sexy, but if they don't do it, you're gonna realize it real quick. And so that's what we're trying to accomplish.
And at the beginning of this podcast, I like what you said is that while I've prepared questions ahead of time, I think this is going to be more for conversation as well. And like Adam and we were talking about this yet. So like I mentioned that you guys are coming on the podcast. And so we had some questions. And one of the things like my manager's manager was like Lido, they were comparing you guys to Lido and how Lido is the greatest liquid staking provider on Ethereum. And they've become so big that maybe they are a threat to the whole crypto idea of the 51% attack. In with Marinade, you guys avoid that because you are delegating that liquid stake Solana to different validators at a time. So you guys won't have this problem.
Yeah, and we also don't have any ownership or custody of the soul. We can't do anything in that way. That's one thing. And then secondly, yeah, Lido actually also they have a solution on Solana as well. One of the big differences is, again, we distribute our soul to not the top validators. And then secondly, we're soul native. And I think a lot of the players in the space, whether it be NFT projects or the DeFi projects, they really appreciate working with Solana first projects just because if there's ever a time where your allegiance will be called in or their allegiances lie, and I think even if you ask any Lido person, they would say that their allegiance is on Ethereum. So it's one of those things where a lot of people love to support their own native products.
Like you said, you are Solana native. Are there plans at Marinade? And again, you don't have to answer anything you don't want to. Are there plans at Marinade to go beyond Solana or like to jump onto Ethereum or Polygon or Metis or Avalanche or some of the other networks?
It would be news to me if it was, but I will say it's hard enough to do one thing, and it's 10 times as hard to do two things. It's like when you go to a restaurant, they say, we have the best coffee and the best burgers. That can't be true because it's hard enough to have the best coffee or the best burger. You definitely don't have both of them. And so I think we're in that situation where we just want to do one thing really well. And then after that is done really well, then we can think about one step by a left foot type of thing. So,
Make total sense. Yeah. And I have to say, as somebody who's like yourself, right? While I started crypto in 2017, I'm definitely not like what I would consider the rest of my coworkers who are like real degens and use Curve and all this really complicated stuff in crypto that I'm like, oh my God, if I had more time, I'd love to try this out. But Marinade is easy to use. Your Phantom wallet and everything just works easily, not to mention like the cool aesthetic that you guys have. So that's one of the things I want to talk about, like going to like a Curve or going to a Lido, right? Like you guys have this like very relaxing, maybe subconscious effect when you do go to the Marinade sort of interface. Like what was the decision behind the aesthetics and the cartoon and the seafood?
Okay, so I do think that Solana in general has a vibe, right? It starts with the colors, starts with the fluorescent purple lights that you see at the hacker houses. And I personally love those color schemes anyways, like the whole synthwave retro look. And my wardrobe speaks to that, although today I'm not wearing anything like that. So I think they're chill Miami type of vibe. And so I think for us, I wasn't part of that decision per se, but I can tell you from working with the team that we don't want to make it so serious because then you become what you're trying to eliminate, which is like that whole TradFi suits. And if you're not wearing a suit, you're not serious. And as we know, that's not true. And if you've ever seen Sam Bankman-Fried, the way he dresses and his shoes at like the Senate hearings or whatever, that he's not like that. And a lot of other players are not like that. If you ever met Anatoly or Raj, they're just normal dudes and they'll talk to you and you would never guess. If you didn't know, you would never guess that these guys are some of the biggest trendsetters in crypto.
Definitely. Thanks for that. And I didn't think you were part of the decision, but it was still like it's still good to hear and understand because I have talked about that sort of Solana vibe before on the podcast, and it's very interesting to hear from somebody actually in the ecosystem. So I messaged a few community members right before the show last week when we were talking about getting you guys on. One of the biggest questions I got was, and again, right, none of this is financial advice, and you can say what you want. What can people do with their mSOL? Because I know some community members like we launched SOLI and people are like, okay, we've got some SOLI, but actually I love Marinade. I want to buy some Marinade on my own. And MNDE, besides the Solana, so they stake their Solana, they've got their mSOL, but they're like people in what I would say that my vein or my age group where they've got kids, they've got family. They're like, okay, I've got my mSOL. I know I should be doing something with it, but what should I do with it?
So there's a few things. Number one is to take a step back. How do you get mSOL? Number one, and the one we prefer is you stake your soul on our website. We'll have a link and all that, but you stake your soul. The second is you can go on an open market using like Jupiter Exchange, and you can just swap SOL for mSOL or Saber or whatever you want to use. And so you can swap it out, but it's better to secure the system to stake it directly because then it turns into mSOL. Whereas an open market is just a trade. The second part of your question, which is what can I do with my mSOL? One of the things that we've been building here at Marinade is a bunch of integrations because if I give you liquid staking solution, if I give you mSOL, there's nothing you can do with it. It's useless. And so I think of the top 30 DeFi projects on DeFi Llama on Solana, like 27 of them we have integrations with. And so I would be hard pressed to think of a DeFi product on Solana that doesn't use mSOL that anyone really cares about. And the question used to be where can we use it? Now the question that we're thinking about is where can we not use it? Because that's what my job is, right? And so there's a few things you can do. You can just lend it. You can provide as collateral, and then you can borrow something else against it, USDC, UST, whatever it may be, like on Solend or something. You can also LP, but again, there's all these risks with LPing with like impermanent loss, and so you can do mSOL and let's say USDC or USDT or Bitcoin or Ethereum. So you can do it that way. And those are like the two main ways. And there's also these new vaults, right? Like Friction and Katana, where they're covered vaults. You can do that as well. And we actually have a DeFi page on our website where you can just click DeFi and it gives you like a bunch of different protocols that we interact with. And those are pretty good starting places.
That's great. And Torab, you can see this. Like I'm using a video that you guys have that shows like how to stake mSOL. So as we're talking, this is playing in a loop. And it's also
Yeah.
good for me as well because I can see as well like that DeFi integration page. So just for some of the sort of newbies to crypto and stuff, once they get their mSOL, they just go to this page. They can click the deposit button and whatever they like, and that's it. So like they don't need to go to another page or do anything like super weird or something. It's just everything can be done through the Marinade Finance page.
Yeah, like back in the days, you had to go to like Uniswap, whatever, add the two tokens, then you make the LP token, then you go to vfat.tools. It depends when people got into crypto, if they know what I'm talking about. Then you have to go and then add it there. If it had VFAT, VFAT made your life easy. If you didn't, you have to go to the website itself. And it was just like this whole thing. But now it's much more straightforward and you don't have to have a bunch of tabs open. So that makes life a lot easier. Yeah.
It was wonderful. And I think I've got to mention that I think just before preparing for the show, I got this video and I think I might have to just link it in our Telegram and Discord. Say, hey guys, this is the answer to your question. Just watch this video and you can see like places or things you can do with your mSOL available from the Marinade YouTube channel.
So one question that people might have is why would I not use mSOL? Someone says we have the greatest product on earth, and then the question you always want to know is why would I not want to use it? Because if it was that simple, then everyone would do it. And so the main, believe it or not, the main hindrance right now is NFTs. Because if you're active in the NFT game, no one is doing mSOL mints, right? The mint is zero point 0.2 SOL or zero point 0.5 SOL, or if you want to go to Magic Eden, you have to buy. And for a lot of NFTs, you almost every project you need actual SOL. And so what we're trying to do is find integrations into those NFT marketplaces and whatnot, so then people have no reason not to use mSOL. And so that's currently where we are. And we believe that once we, because it's all about like annoying. If you have your mSOL and then you want to buy NFT, like, man, I have to go swap it or I have to go unstake it. And so we just want to remove those hurdles because human beings were inherently lazy. And so we want to make it as easy to do what we want you to do, which in this case is help secure the Solana network.
And that's a good answer. And you mentioned Magic Eden as well, because I started doing NFTs like last year and I love Magic Eden like with a passion. And it would be so cool if you could use your mSOL to mint NFTs and use their launchpad and stuff. So is that something that's available or you're in discussions with Magic Eden at the moment?
Yeah, I think for almost any marketplace, it's even in their own benefit. So I know that things are brewing. I can't speak to the exact timelines, but just know I can't think of a reason why it wouldn't happen eventually.
Nice. That's wonderful. Eventually, it's something to look forward to because it is like I'm a big fan of the Solana NFT space compared to Ethereum and OpenSea. They're wonderful, and that's definitely a place to make money. But I think Solana is definitely the more accessible NFT marketplace. And like you said, as having that benefit of staking with Marinade, getting your mSOL, and being able to do NFT stuff as well as DeFi stuff as an
Yeah,
option, that is fantastic.
that's the dream.
Yes, yes. Okay, looking into well, before I get into that actually as well, I want to talk about the Marinade DAO because that leads into the whole sort of NFTs and it's so much exciting stuff. I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah. So one of the issues in crypto in general is everyone has a governance token, but number one, there's nothing to even freaking govern. And then secondly, the things that they want you to govern don't really matter. And so for us, we want to figure out, okay, we want there to be something where people would care to vote on. And so that's the impetus of launching like this whole governing. And then I'll speak as to why we did NFTs. So right now we're going to have different proposals, and one of the big ones is going to be to have 10% of all staked SOL to be able to be voted on. So let's just say we have 10 million SOL, 1 million of it, you can vote whichever validator. If you have Marinade tokens, you can stake it and then vote. I want mine to go to Monkey DAO. I want it to go to DJ Ape Academy's validator, whatever. And so what it does is it allows users to have some sense of ownership, but at the same time, we get to stick to our ethos of decentralization. Because if we made it 100%, theoretically, someone could come buy all the marinade and just route to themselves. And then we've centralized the decentralizer. And so we don't want that to happen. Yeah. And then the NFT portion of it, the reason why we did the NFT is because why not? It just makes things fun. Instead of giving you a VE marinade token, we give you an NFT. And then the NFT you can actually even sell on the secondary market. So on Magic Eden, you can then go, there's some listed right now, and you can buy the NFT. And each NFT represents X amount of marinade staked. And that's going to impact the voting power. And so we did the NFT because we're trying to do something new, which is bridge this gap between DeFi and NFTs. And so I met with the Monkey DAO team yesterday, and they're really amazing. And so we were having a discussion. I said, look, the issue with DeFi and building a community in DeFi is an inherently selfish enterprise. In DeFi, I want all the yield for myself. I don't want you in my pools. Like, I want to keep this to myself. In NFT, it's a community, so it's all community building. And so, how do you bridge these two things, which are inherently opposite? They're two completely different intentions. And so that's why we did the NFT, because in this situation, we're decentralizing Solana, so everyone on the Solana ecosystem wins. And so having NFTs just brings the community together. And so that's what we're trying to do is bridge that gap between DeFi and NFTs.
And staking your marinade and getting your NFTs. Like, how do you I wouldn't say force community engagement. How do you encourage community engagement? Because some people might have their marinade, they stake it, they get their NFT, but they never vote or they never do anything. What are the incentives within Marinade to say, hey, I should vote for this validator, I should vote for this proposal?
So the thing is, you can't make someone care for the most part. And so, look, a lot of times, if you've ever used Snapshot in Ethereum or whatever, a lot of times for voting, they'll do is they'll retroactively airdrop. Now, the issue is if I tell everyone, hey, if you vote on the first two proposals, we're going to give you airdrop, then everyone's going to vote. But what we'd rather do is if you vote and then you don't know that we're going to be giving you an airdrop later. And I can neither confirm nor deny that this is something that is being discussed, but we want good actors because it's good to have a carrot, but sometimes it's okay to just care about the garden, not just the carrot type of thing. And so we're trying to foster that community where they actually care. And then obviously the financial incentive is going to be choosing the validators. And so for a lot of people, let's say you love DJ Nape Academy. And like, dude, I want to support them and I have some Marinade tokens and I don't want to sell and I think this is cool. You can vote and then route some SOL to them. And now they're making some profits off of the fees. And so that's one way. And then second is there is also potential for a bribing mechanism, the same way that you mentioned Curve and Convex, where people can bribe you and say, hey, because there's going to be monetary value, which is going to be attributed to like Marinade tokens, where this is how much voting power that they can delegate in terms of SOL. And so I'm sure someone will build that, and then you can actually have like a certain amount of money you make every epoch, every time you vote. And so that could be some cool passive income or potentially not financial advice.
Okay, talking about the NFTs, like you have I believe it's 4 or 5 different levels, right?
Yeah. I
Um,
believe it's four levels.
Four
Yeah.
levels. And when I was first doing the podcast, and I was telling people, I'm like, yeah, so you need first thing I was like, you need $1,000 of Marinade tokens, but it's actually 1,000 Marinade tokens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's different levels. So if you go onto the website to the Marinade.finance, the app MNDE, it'll show you like the different levels based on how much you stake with it.
So one of the things I was asking is like, what was why did you decide on these levels? And Are there going to be future levels or other expansions of your NFT ideas in the future? Or is it, this is going to be the be all and end all of governance when it comes to Marinade?
Yeah, so just to correct, there's actually five. The five is if you have 250,000 or more, and that's the one I was forgetting about. Yeah, so there's five levels. And so you can actually upgrade your NFT by adding more marinade to it. And this is something new. We would never be that arrogant to say this is it and we're never going to iterate because we know how this works. And if you've ever been in product or anything, that's not how these things work. And so this is an experiment because look, there's a lot of projects that start from NFTs and then go into DeFi. But what we're doing is we're starting from DeFi and going into NFTs. And I don't know of many projects that have done that in a meaningful way. And so I don't know if you have you heard of Nicholas Taleb? Like he wrote like Black Swan and Anti-Fragile.
I've heard of Black Swan. I
He's
didn't
a
realize it was connected to Nicholas Taleb.
Yeah, he wrote it. So he wrote the book Black Swan, like when you talk about Black Swan events and stuff. But anyways, he mentions that if you're going to be a philosopher king, let's say you want to be a philosopher king, it's easier to be a philosopher king when you start off as a king and then become a philosopher than it is to be a philosopher and then become a king. And so for us, we're in that boat where it's much harder to be starting in DeFi and go to NFTs than it is from NFTs to go to DeFi. And but that's going to be part of the challenge, but it's fun. And so we're just going to try it out. And it actually has utility. So it's not just something you keep in your wallet. You actually use it to vote in governance.
Definitely, yes. Very useful and very cool. Not to mention, I'm a big art person. I love all the things out of all the like our index tokens and products and stuff. And you guys have like the coolest governance token and aesthetic when it comes to a website. So I'm a big fan of it. One thing I do want to mention as well, because I think that's fantastic. Like, you guys have a really active Discord, like, you have events running all the time. And I think that is something that's really cool. And we've talked about the NFTs as a way to engage community. What other ways are coming in the future, or what other ways exist at the moment that help you to encourage community engagement besides like the cool competitions you have and other things going on in your Discord server?
Yeah, we're always looking for different ways. So we're very open to suggestions. If you think like we're having like a video, like some gaming stuff, honestly, I can't even keep track of it because there's so many things. Like it's like post your picture of your food and do this and do that. And honestly, it's just a bunch of people who care about the same thing that want to find other things that they care about. And so that's what all this community building is, right? Like generally your friends, it was one thing that brought you together. You were in the same classroom or you like the same sports team. And they say, oh, you like this food too? Oh, me too. And so that's how friendships are forged, is finding a bunch of things that you guys all agree on. And so that's basically all community building is, and finding a common purpose. And so we're very open to any suggestions, and we're hoping that the NFT will be a catalyst for that community forging.
Moving towards the end, like, one of the things I did want to ask, like, on your recent March update in your Medium article, and anyone who knows the podcast will know everything we've talked about from the Marinade page to the Medium page, YouTube channel will all be in the show notes on your podcast app, on the YouTube channel. Is you mentioned one of the biggest challenges is decentralization. And you've talked about this as well already on the podcast. Why is decentralization so important beyond the typical sort of crypto reasons, but specifically for Marinade? And the biggest question is, what can fans of Marinade look forward to in 2022? And then there's another question after that.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so centralization is basically why Bitcoin was created, right? That was whole Satoshi's vision, which is, hey, a few people maintain all this power, they get to create money out of nothing, and that's bad. Central banking, that's the bad thing. And so the situation with proof of stake is that with proof of stake, you don't want there to be centralization because a few bad actors can attack the network. Same thing with Bitcoin, right? A 51% attack. Now, for them, that obviously that's proof of work and it's much harder. And proof of stake is also hard. It's difficult, but it's less difficult. And that's why the Bitcoin maxis shake their fists at the sky and say, damn you, Ethereum and everyone else. You guys are all the same old people. And then the Ethereum people call them geezers and say, you guys are all boomers. And now the Ethereum people are shaking their fists at Solana people. Oh, you guys, you so centralized VC chain. And so I'm sure tomorrow the Solana folks are going to start shaking their fists at some new chain. And to answer your question, you don't want centralization because it creates a much more robust blockchain. And so if you have all these products and stuff built on this blockchain, you don't want a few guys to come and be able to destroy it or halt it. Especially like right now, it's just pictures of monkeys and cats and this and that. But eventually, let's say your house is on the blockchain or something really important, you don't want it to be able to be attacked that easily. And so that's why we're working to decentralize the system or the blockchain. And then we also want to decentralize Marinade itself. And so that's why, as you mentioned, that we've written some Medium articles, and one of them is that we're doing a public raise. And one of the main reasons why is we want to distribute Marinade tokens far and wide so that we don't want a Frankenstein situation where we create this great thing and it turns on us. So that's what we're trying to.
You guys have already done so much towards decentralization, and you've spoken about that as well. Is there any more to do?
I think honestly, opening up governance. So one of the issues about governance, everyone says these DAOs are fake, right? Just in general, all DAOs are fake. They're actually centralized. They just pretend it. And for the most part, that's true. That is a very valid criticism. But there's a reason why. A lot of people don't know what they don't know. So then when you open up the floodgates for them to give their vote, you realize, man, I should have never gave these guys a voice. If you're on Facebook at all, you know that as a fact. You don't want everyone to have a voice. And so the number one thing for protocol is survive, right? Once you survive, then you can move towards decentralization, but that's a privilege, right? So being decentralized is a privilege. And so for a lot of us and a lot of people that are working in DAOs, that's the vision, but you don't want to move towards it and then you die because then it was all for nothing. And so that's why we're trying to distribute the Marinade token and really trying to get as many people involved. We're not just trying to get the big VCs to like or anything like that to participate. We want everyone to participate, like small validator, big validator, it doesn't matter. And we honestly just want to build with people that care about Solana. So if you care and you're building, then Marinade will always have a seat for you at the table.
That's wonderful to say as well. 2022, is there anything you want to plug that's coming up in the future or hint at? I guess crypto people are always looking forward to the next big thing or the exciting things when they're a big fan of a project. For Marinade, is there anything you wanna hint at that people should be, besides following you guys on social media and stuff and anything
Yeah.
else, what should they be looking forward to? It's April, so there's still like another 8 months of the year.
Oh, you asking for some alpha hints or drops or something like that?
For the Marinade people, for the Amun people on our side who are fans of Marinade, of course, anything they should be like, okay, I've got to buy some Marinade tokens and get into the NFT game or whatever.
Yeah, so look, most people they're not gonna do the Marinate NFT just because the art itself, because most people who are in NFTs aren't really in it for the art either. They're trying to flip it. So we're not that naive to think that, but we do think that it is a cool flavor to bring to the table as we build this out. And I will say that, hey, we are working towards making sure that our early holders are rewarded. And so we understand, and that's why our tokenomics are going to reflect that. And that's what is governance as part of that to make sure that there is value being brought to the Marinade token itself. And so we're going to be working with a lot of top players in the space to make sure that they become part of our governance. And that means having MNDE tokens. And so I would tell people, hey, if you care about the Solana network and you care about decentralization, just play around with mSOL. I'm not saying to buy anything or do anything, just play around with it and see if you understand it, because I'd be hard pressed to find people that understand it and don't want to use it.
No, and I totally agree. And like you said, play around with the mSOL. That's literally what I did, and not for any reason. I'm like, wow, this is cool. This looks nice. Let's give it a try. And it's affordable. It's not like you're playing around with a single Bitcoin or playing around with a single ETH, which 3K
Yeah.
USD might be a bit out of reach for some people. Talking about Marinade and mSOL as well, is there a place like can people follow you on Twitter and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we have a Discord, we have a Twitter. I have a Twitter. I would say the best place to get updates is the Marinade Twitter and Discord. Obviously, in Discord, you just have the privilege of being able to be more consistent with your updates, whereas Twitter, you don't want to just be spamming people's their feeds. So we try to use the Twitter sparingly, but in our Discord, we have an announcement channel and we have a bunch of other channels as well. So I definitely think that's where people, if they want to learn more, that's where they should go.
Okay. And you don't have to, because I always ask guests, like, for people who do want to follow you, is your Twitter publicly available or just follow
Yeah,
Marinade?
yeah. I'll share it with you. I'll share my Twitter handle with you, and then you can post it in the notes.
That's very cool. So if you guys do want to follow Torab, definitely check down the notes as well because he's been like fantastic speaker so far today, early on Wednesday morning for me. So it's awesome. One thing I do always ask everybody towards the end of the show: are there any sort of pieces of advice you want to give people getting into crypto or Marinade holders or people in crypto? Any sort of pearls of wisdom you want to drop?
Oh man, you have to have pearls of wisdom to cast them to other people,
Dude,
but
you've had so many pearls of wisdom, so you can't say you have to have you. I think you have so many, they're coming out of your ears, man. So you've already said a lot, but if there's any final things you want to say to people, there's
Okay.
actually a question I want to ask you, but we'll ask you after this part.
Okay, so from the crypto side, I would just say have conviction, and that if your conviction is based on the token price, you're gonna have a really bad time. And so that doesn't mean you blindly follow something, but if you understand what a project does, and then you understand the value that it brings, and you understand the ecosystem, it should be, it's not going to be 100% clear, but it'll be clear as to, does this make sense? If you can't explain it, and if you can understand it, you for sure can explain it. But if you can't explain it, then you don't really understand it. So I would just say, hey, a lot of times there's these hype trains, and I'm buying this NFT. Why? Because I can stake it to get these tokens. Oh my God, the APY is 300%. Okay, what are you going to do with those tokens? I don't know, but they're $4 right now or whatever it is. And so you don't want to get caught up in the hype. That's probably my big crypto advice. That's to myself first, actually, and then to everyone else listening. And then when it comes to non-crypto stuff, I would say it's really easy to get sucked into this like 24/7. That's all you do. I know there's like on Twitter recently, people are like, go and touch the grass. But I really do think that you need to have something outside of crypto or else you're going to go crazy because if your entire life is just the state of the market, because that's what generally happens, you're going to be emotionally unstable. So that's probably just some high level advice.
That is some very good advice as well. One of the things I wanted to ask in the beginning, because I live in Asia, I'm Indian as well, and like Middle Eastern Asian culture tends to be very fiscally conservative. And when you tell your parents are a big thing. When you tell parents, hey man, mom, dad, I'm getting into crypto, they're like, what's crypto? It's fake, it's a Ponzi scheme and stuff. So for people in your situation or in our situation, like how do you not fight with your parents about you saying I'm working in crypto or I'm buying Bitcoin or something? Like how did you convince your mom and dad? Oh, or did you do that?
Yeah, I'm like married with kids and but still that parental thing never goes away. So like my family, I'm from Afghanistan, although I was like born and raised in America. So again, when you come from a place where, when the Russians invaded, you had to take what you could carry on your back, they have a very different approach to money. Or for a lot of people in America, their grandparents grew up in the Great Depression, where the bank was meaningless to them and they all buried money in their backyards. And so they passed that on to their kids. And it takes a few generations to undo that type of stuff. And if you're Daisy or whatever, or Middle East, it's all about gold is the only real thing. And why are you buying this? Buy some gold. That's what's going to help you when there's famine, as if you can eat a gold bar. But anyways, I do think that a lot of times parents just remember that they're saying what they think is best. And not to completely like, you're so dumb, mom and dad. I think that's a wrong approach. But I do think that a lot of times you're just not gonna, for people that like my parents sometimes have trouble logging into their iPhone account. They're like, son, what's my password? I'm like, I don't know what your password is. Why are you asking me? And so a lot of times, like if they can't get their passwords for their iTunes account, how the hell are they gonna understand DeFi products on Solana? Like they're not. So don't try to explain in that way. But I think a lot of times parents, when they see passion and they see, if you can dangle a little bit of money, oh, I made this much on this monkey picture, they're like, oh, okay. Because the worst thing is to say, I made all this theoretical money, but if you can show them something tangible, buy them a little gift that's, oh, I bought this with my crypto money, all of a sudden cryptos are real. This also goes out to the married people as well.
No, that's fantastic because I used to be a teacher as well. Like before I got into crypto, I was a teacher for 10 years. And I have students now who I taught in elementary school who are like buying crypto in Taiwan and they have not told their parents. And they're like, hey, teacher, so how do I explain Bitcoin to my parents? I'm like, that is a very good question. I will get back to you on that. But no, I always love asking people, especially who come from somewhat like fiscally conservative cultures, like dangle it in front of them is like, that is gold right there. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, but it's funny. Although we come from fiscally conservative backgrounds, oh, if you're not a lawyer or a doctor, you're a bum, basically.
Yes.
But there is a love for entrepreneurial spirit, right? If you look at some of the top entrepreneurs, they will be people that come from those backgrounds, from our backgrounds. And so I do think that there is a innate desire to start your own business. They just want to make sure that you can feed yourself first. And so, funny story. So I was at Breakpoint, Portugal, this past the in Lisbon, and so we met with the Pet Rock Capital team. And so they're just like a little fund of, and they're all young guys, like really young, like college guys. And so they invested in Radium very early. And basically, the group of them have, I would consider FU money or like retirement money. And so they're telling us, oh, yeah, we have like a few team members, but they're not here. And I said, why? Like, where are they? Oh, their parents made them take their college exams and they wouldn't let them come. And I was like dying. Like they have FU money, retirement money, and their parents like, no, you must finish your exams. And sometimes that's just the world we live in. You just gotta love it. I'd rather have that than not have any parental like guidance.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
totally. And I'm actually going to cut the segment because I wanted to ask this in the beginning, and then I was like, so excited to get started into all the Marinade questions. So I'll probably
Yeah,
put
yeah.
this in the beginning when we talk about like background stuff because it's very useful and you've provided so much value to listeners and viewers today. So I really appreciate it. Torab, thank you so much for your evening. And like you said, you are busy. It is Ramadan and you've definitely got things to do. People, please follow Torab on Twitter as well. Definitely somebody. I actually have not. I tried to look for your Twitter on Twitter before
It,
the show.
because it's not my name. It's Mazar's very own because my family is from the city of Mazar Sharif, and then it's like a play on Drake because he's October's very own. And anyways, that's the whole thing. So I'll send it to you, and so yeah, yeah, I'll send you for sure the Twitter handle.
So yeah, follow you, follow Marinade as well. I mean, a bunch of our community, they already follow you guys on Twitter and Discord, so it's totally cool. But if you're not, you definitely should. Check out Marinade. So I know some of you already are in the Marinade ecosystem. If you haven't, if you're interested in Solana, I'm sure you've heard a lot of good things today. Definitely head over. It is very easy. You guys know I'm not the smartest tool in the shed when it comes to crypto, but definitely head over to Marinade. You will not regret it. Thank you again, Torab, and I hope we can have you guys on in another 6 months or so to say what's going on, what's the plans for 2023 maybe. And thank you again, and hopefully talk to you in another 6 months.
Okay, man. You have a good one, and thank you so much.
No problem.